Hey, I'm Andy, and welcome to Rock, Roll, and Red Plaid. Alrighty, we are back here on the Rock, Roll, and Red Plaid podcast here with Stevie Salas. Stevie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I just okayed your recording button.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. It was I know we've been trying to do this a couple different ways, so I'm glad we'd finally make it happen.
I am so sorry for that. It's just
Yeah. Oh,
schedule's bananas these days. Like,
oh, man. Yeah, I'm doing a these couple. I'm doing a organizing and playing at a fundraiser gig that we're doing in November, and it's taking up all basically everything. So,
yeah, yeah. You know what I did? I'm so stupid. I'm from San Diego, and I'm at my
hmm
house in Austin, Texas now. But while in San Diego, my local friends, I play with all my local guys I grew up with in high school. They're still all
hmm
my friends. But we play in the summers for fun, and it's always packed out at the beach. And there's a promoter there, and he's a really great guy. And he always asks me to come and do these different gigs. And I always say no, I can't. I'm always like, I can't. Because it costs me $1,000 to fly to San Diego and rent a car,
yeah,
go to my boat and hang out there. And it's a pain in the ass. But normally, I just don't have the time. And so this time, he asked me and I felt guilty. And I found out I had the time because my son didn't have a football game here in Texas on the Friday. So I could fly out and rehearse and do this thing on the Saturday with all these local bands and trying to be like a good guy, like I don't like to try to be big league in anybody. So when I go home, I want to be with all my friends and just
sure.
like I was where I grew up, went to school and, just might be with all my friends. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this one. I promise. I'm not going to flake. I'm going to do it. Sure. And all of a sudden my schedule went nuts. So now I got to go to Costa Rica for something. Turn around for after a day and a half. I'm going to take my business partner backstage at Guns N' Roses as well. And get up in the morning, fly to San Diego, rehearse, do this gig, and then get back to the airport and fly to Colombia to South America. So I could have just went from Central America to South America and just kept going, But yeah, stupid. So yeah, I know all about this gigs taking up all my time.
That makes me that much more grateful that you've come to do this. So thank you. Speaking of playing and everything, just going real back quick, right at the beginning, who was the person who made you want to pick up the guitar in the very beginning when you were a kid?
It's kind of weird. I have to probably say, I don't know if it was Paul Stanley or,
Okay.
I was so into Kiss when I was young. I mean, they were just so amazing, but I was into Rush and I was in all
Yeah.
these bands. I'm talking about, fifth grade and sixth grade.
hmm
And ironically, I even dressed up as Paul Stanley for Halloween like every kid did.
I was just
But I
gonna
mean,
say you.
I was a hardcore fan. My brother-in-law was super cool. He built me my first guitar and he taught me how to race motocross and he built me my first surfboards and he taught me how to fish because I go marlin fishing and all over the world. And he was the best because he loved rock and roll. So he turned me on to David Bowie. I mean, Ziggy Stardust, and I was super into Mick Ronson. And he turned me on to Kiss, and I was lucky because I got to see Sabbath with Black Oak, Arkansas opening, and I've you know all these years
Wow.
later, I played with Tommy Aldridge on something I did. I played with Geezer Butler from Black
Wow.
Sabbath.
Wow.
Paul Stanley's my friend. Like I mean, and Rush. The first concert I saw Kiss was in a small venue in San Diego, and Rush was the opening act. It was
I
the
was
Dress
gonna
to Kill.
ask. Yeah.
It was the Dress to Kill tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was before the Kiss Alive, and
Yeah.
Rush opened up with Finding My Way, and it's Finding My Way, yeah. And ironically now, like I just got a text from Alex Lifeson a couple days ago. It was his birthday. So all these, it's weird to think as a little kid you idolize these people,
Yeah.
you love their work and their
Yeah.
art, and then one day, if you're lucky, they start to consider you one of them. And hey, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
so those guys inspired me to
Yeah.
want to play the guitar. And I think that maybe sometimes, and this sounds a bit like, mumbo jumbo, arty farty stuff, but I feel like those people were part they were in my part of my soul. Maybe as an American Indian, I think this way. And I was meant to meet all these guys and be a part of this, and they were meant to inspire me, and because everybody in my life like that is all of a sudden it's like I've known them my whole life. It's weird.
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy. I mean, I'll tell you real quick, a little bit same subject of this
Sure,
inspiration,
please do. Yeah.
but when David Bowie, the Modern Love record came out, I was a massive Bowie fanatic, right? And I'm talking still as a young guy. Carmine Rojas, for some reason, resonated. The bass player for Bowie, who played the bass lines on Let's Dance, and he did that record and then the tours. And I don't know what it was, but I'd see Carmine Rojas, and I would feel like Carmine Rojas is the guy. And I had his poster on my wall. And, he's the bass player, and he was playing with John Waite, and he was doing all of Tina Turner, but then he was Bowie's guy. And ironically, some year, not more than 4 years later, 3 to 4 years later, I go to LA to try to make it music. And within about 3 years of getting up there, I'm auditioning for Rod Stewart, and the bass player is Carmine Rojas. And I feel like I've known him my whole life. And he walks up to me and he says to me, "Hey, I want you to practice these songs real quick a little bit with me right now." He goes, "I don't know what it is about you, but I feel like you're supposed to get this gig." And then he told me, he goes, "You remind me of my little brother who died in my arms when I was 14 and he was 12, and I had to carry him in the hospital." I'm just sitting there going, at Audible in Los Angeles, getting ready to walk out and play with Rod Stewart and Tony Thompson and Eddie Martinez. And I'm just like, this thing. And I was thinking, I got Carmine's poster on my wall, and something
Yeah.
made me put that poster on my wall and idolized Carmine. And Carmine was the guy who changed my life,
Yeah.
in a massive way. So, I think a lot of musicians out there, should think about these things and use the force, so to speak, like Luke Skywalker, like Obi-Wan said, because it's
Yeah.
almost like the force. If you don't screw it up, you just let it lead you.
Yeah.
So those inspirations maybe were a bit more than inspiring for me. They were the universe trying to tell me something.
That may be the most poetic answer to a first question we've ever had here.
Got to be an Indian to know that stuff.
Well, there it is. Yeah. Um, I feel that the same way. I very small percentage have Abenaki tribe in me.
Right on, right on.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember for me, like you kind of said, getting eventually to know some people you've grown up listening to and loving their stuff. Just recently on my last record, I had Billy Sheehan and Ray Luzier
There
on,
you go.
and I'm like, I've been listening to Billy in one way, shape, or form since I was 10, and Ray
Yeah.
about 12, 13. So it's like, when did no, I didn't expect this to happen.
They're both, and you know what? And they're both amazing guys, and they're both super cool. You know that thing where you meet some guy and he's such a. But all these guys, like Billy and all the real guys, like me and Billy go. I left Hamer Guitars in 1989, 90 as the first Color Code album was coming out, because it
Yeah,
was
of
Billy that talked me into signing with Yamaha. He was the Yamaha
course.
stopped doing this,
Yeah,
Billy and whatever that bass was that the one he plays.
the two plugins and everything.
All
Yeah,
that madness, yeah. And he talked me into. He said, "You need to come to Yamaha to the custom shop, work with Leo Knapp." And so during Color Code, about midway through the Satriani tour, I don't know if people noticed, but I switched from my red Hammer Telly. Well, I broke it in half at some concert. I'm sure someone out there will write you if they see this and tell you about it. And I started playing Yamaha custom shop guitars, and because of Billy Sheehan.
there you go.
You know what I just did? I was just in Tokyo a bunch in December, January, February, and March
Yes.
of this year and the end of last year.
Hmm.
And I saw Billy was playing at Budokan with Mr. Big
Was
was doing.
Mr. Big? Yeah,
They were doing their final concert of all time.
yeah.
So I called up Billy, like, "Hey, I'm in Tokyo," and he goes, "Yeah, come to the show." So I popped down to Budokan and I watched the show, and it was like kind of weird because I mean they were really like it was like they were almost on stage crying. They were like, "This is it. This is our last show." But everyone says that, and I bet they'll come back because someone will offer them a ton of dough. You know what I mean? But it was pretty heavy, and it was great to see Billy, and it was awesome. It was awesome. I
Yeah.
love Billy.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, what a genuine human being and an unparalleled bass player, you know.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. I like great musicians for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And you amongst them too. Your playing, and specifically your rhythm playing. I've listened to multiple of your tunes while getting ready for this. As so accurate and percussive are the two words that came to my mind. It was almost I remember hearing a phrase like it's almost like a chordal drum.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, were there times where you thought it might be beneficial to learn to play like that, or did that just kind of come the way you were naturally strung? No pun intended. You
Yeah. I grew up in San Diego and Oceanside and Carlsbad, California,
know?
surfing and skateboarding. And I was surrounded by not only amazing musicians down there, guys when I was a kid, there were musicians who were just fantastic.
Mhm.
I was also surfing every day, and there's an energy to surfing where you're
Yeah.
going with the flow of the ocean, and then you're also getting aggressive and a bit punk rock, and you're slamming in, and
Yeah.
and but it has a flow to it and a vibration, almost like ballet mixed with ultimate fighting or something, right? And and same with skateboarding. And when I started playing guitar, living in North County, San Diego, we had a Marine Corps base there called Camp Pendleton. And so I had friends, black friends and white friends and purple friends and green friends. I mean, you didn't see color. You just,
Mm.
so we could be at our high school dance, rocking out the Brick House and the Commodores. And then Led Zeppelin and rock and roll would come on and all the girls would still dance too. So I was exposed to these things without it feeling like one was this and one was the other. So I moved to LA. I had a knack for playing good rhythm because if I was playing Joe Jackson, like, one more time, or Haircut 100, and those were like new wavy English songs, right?
Mhm.
And and so if I had to play those kind of songs along with, Heartbreaker by Led Zeppelin, which is actually pretty funky,
Mm.
and because a lot of hip hop beats came from Zeppelin grooves and from early Black Sabbath Bill Ward grooves.
Yeah.
Bam, boom,
Yeah.
boom, ba, boom, bam, 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 boom, ba, boom, ba, bam.
Totally.
I mean, you're down, you're doing this to those beats. It
Yeah.
wasn't until the '80s and the drum machine when drummers started playing guitar on the drums. Say Sweet Leaf. Sweet Leaf is right? So drummers started going boom, 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 and it's so lame. Bill Ward's going boom, 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 and people lost that thing. And that thing is in my
Mm.
right hand, and it's in the drummer's hi hat, and it's in the foot, right, and kick snare and hi hat. So I
Okay.
started really listening to that stuff. Um, and I moved to LA in '85. Got out of high school, had quit my really popular band that I had called This Kids, and I right in the height of us being really popular. I just left. I said I got to try to do this right now. And I got to LA and I realized like I'm not as good as Eddie Van Halen, who I worshipped, but Eddie Van Halen's rhythm was as funky as any
Yeah.
funkadelic
Oh
song.
yeah.
People don't talk about that, but it's funky, man. And so
Totally.
I loved
Totally.
Halen, and I loved Brian Setzer
Mm.
because I loved his whole his rhythm and rockabilly soloing was flawless. And I was really getting it. I was a much better guitar player back then, I think, because I was really into it, really working on it. Then I was in LA and I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I'm never going to be as good as Edward, and I just go, I got to find something. So I thought, I love black music and I love rock music, and I am going to try to play rock music that's funky with my Marshall amp and not a clean amp. Because in the '80s, the mid '80s, that everybody had this. If you go back and listen, you're probably too young, but if you go back and listen to the records, it was always this direct guitar, you know. It was like a little kid. So I'm like, I'm doing it heavy, right? But to do it heavy, you got less space to make it funky. So you really you got to attack. So in comes 1986 September. I'm homeless, living on the studio couch at Baby O Studios because David O from the Plimsouls and Rick Parada, who ended up developing and building the matchless amplifier. They ran the studio, and they didn't want to see me home, so they let me sleep on the couch at night, and I would clean up and sweep and help out with the rehearsal room. And one night, all these musicians would come in every night, like Gene Simmons and all these people. Like,
Right. Yeah.
my name's Stevie Salas. I play guitar, and they're like, you, I'm like, okay. And
Oh
so,
no.
yeah, I don't give a shit. Thick skin, I don't care. So I go to the next guy, same thing. And I remember I met Mark Ferrari. He was in the band Keel, and he was super kind to me, and he's still my friend to this day. And I met George Clinton from Parliament Funkadelic, and David
Oh
Bradley, who
man.
wrote Atomic Dog. And I said to them the same thing I said to everyone. My name's Stevie Salas. I play guitar. If you need some guitar tonight, I'm around. I ain't doing nothing, because I'm a homeless. And so David Bradley and George Clinton both go, yeah, cool. All right. Like, just no big deal. Nothing. 2 o'clock in the morning, David Bradley comes up in the upstairs lobby of Studio B and wakes me up kind of and said, hey, you want to try some guitar down here? And I'm like, yeah. So I run downstairs, and I had this only $200 Ibanez Roadstar, some kind of cheap, but it had a locking nut wang bar, which, and nobody had back then that good. And these were cheap guitars, but I could wang bar the shit out of some Van Halen, and it stayed in tune. Yeah. So I take that guitar, I go downstairs, and the band Keel had all their gear set up in the studio with yellow tape around it, and Gene Simmons was their producer. And all of it said, do not touch. So George Clinton, being the bad that he is, first thing he does is plug in my Marshall into all their and just plugged it all in to give a what they said and just cranked it up. But here's the kicker. There was another guitar player in there already playing. It was playing all night. And his name was Jack Sherman. And rest in peace, Jack just passed away, I think, last year or a year before. And at that time, Jack Sherman was the guitarist for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. When Hill wasn't there, it was Jack Sherman. Jack Sherman also played guitar with my neighbor down the street from here in Austin, Charlie Sexton. When I first saw Charlie, Jack, so Jack played guitar with him too. So Jack was in there, and I didn't know who Jack was at the time, but I was listening to what Jack was playing, and it was a song called "Hooray for Our Team," which you can find on some old George Clinton record somewhere. And he was playing like this funky thing with like a telly, but get down on there, get down on there, get down on there. And I was thinking to myself, God, it sounds so good. It sounds so good. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I realized at that moment right there, and this was a life-changing moment for me, life-changing, because Jack, I realized, was in there doing Parliament Funkadelic. He and the Chili Peppers and all those guys had learned how to play guitar by studying P-Funk, okay? Mm-hmm. So Jack was in there showing George that he could do this P-Funk really badass. But I could see with George Clinton was really interested in tomorrow, not in yesterday. Mm. I could tell he was like, yeah, that's cool, but I've done that. I've already done that 1,000 times. He didn't say that, but I could hear that. So I said, okay. So I pull out the old wang bar, turn the Boss distortion on the Marshall 100-watt Marshall JMP, and I just whoa! I started doing my Eddie Van Halen and my Steve Stevens imitations. I was a Stevens fanatic. Right? Rebel Yell was mind blowing to me. Sure. And playing, I started doing this. And George Clinton starts going, what the he's got this colored braids, and they're slapping me and hitting me, and he's rocking out. And what you did back then was it was on a roll of 2-inch tape, which was 15 minutes long at 30 IPS.
Yep. And
they would put the groove on from start to finish, and they would roll the tape for 30 minutes. And it was just 30 minutes of that. And I'm going, doing all. And George was like dancing next to me. He's going, now play some blues. I went, okay, now do some crazy. And he was screaming in my ear and for 30 minutes. And my arm, my vein was swelling up. So it was like, and my arm was going to explode. And I was like shaking it up. And Jack Sherman left, and I stayed.
There it is.
Ended up doing about 3 or 4, 5 tracks on that record. But the best part about that record was I was in with him. So every night I'd come in the studio and hang out while he was doing all this. Thomas Dolby and Deborah Barsha and what's her name? The girl, the black girl that was Miss America, and then she got She got kicked out because she ended up naked in Penthouse magazine. And
Vanessa something?
Vanessa Williams.
Yes. Okay.
Vanessa Williams was in there, and she was so freaking good looking and so cool. And then Bootsy Collins came in, and Gary Scheider, was there.
Woo.
Mudbone and Bernie Worrell. No, Bernie wasn't there. Amp Fiddler was there. Amp took Bernie's
Okay.
place. And me and Amp would then that was our both of our first big debuts. It was the George
Hmm.
Clinton Skeletons album. And me and Amp would go on to work right up to his death, recently, where he just passed away last year. Amp and I did Was Not Was together, and we did an Nava Solace, and we did millions of things. I got Amp a record deal, but we both started there with George Clinton, and Thomas Dolby was there, and I got in, and once I was in, everyone thought I was some hotshot guitar player with P-Funk and George Clinton and hanging out with Thomas Dolby and these guys. So they thought I was some big time double scale guy, and so people started calling me, and I started charging double scale, with them not knowing I had never done anything before, and that's how my career started. Yeah, and it was based on that rhythm, the rhythm you're talking
Yeah.
about. So that's when I knew, and I was listening
Yeah.
to what George was doing, and I was listening to everything that was the 80s rock.
Yeah.
And I really didn't want to do that. And I remember the Chili Peppers came in the studio, and I didn't know them, and they were so nice to me. They invited me to the show at the Roxy. And this was still when Hill was in the band, and I think it was Jack Irons on drums. And I
Mm.
remember them coming to the studio to play all the demos to George, and me and Bootsy were sitting there. And the demo of the song I'll never forget, called "I Want to Party on Your." It was, but they did on the album that they recorded. It was really slow. But the demo was like,
Yeah, a little more, yeah, grooving. Yeah.
it was way faster. And
Yeah.
I remember Bootsy Collins whispering in my ear, "Well, I don't think that one's going to get on the radio." Like shit. Like
No,
I'll never,
sir. No.
I'll never forget that. You know what I mean? It's like so. But I was immersed in this rhythm with these guys, and I'd watch Gary Scheider,
Mm.
or Blackbird play these rhythms, and it just became a part of my DNA. And
Yeah.
that's what, and then I really, really developed it on another level. I mean, I really took the time to like figure out how to make rock and roll guitar players love funk rhythm. Like where it wasn't like, he's playing black music. I don't know what I did, but I got really, really good at it. And to the
Yeah.
point where later on, I don't do it so much like that now, but what I get called for now is a lot of drummers have me play the rhythm tracks with them, because when my right hand and their hi-hats lock in, everyone's head starts doing this, and you know that your track is going to be swinging.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, people talk about like, that the funky elements of it and everything. It's like I'm giving the edge to you over Nuno. I'm sorry. But
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie. I love Nuno, but I'm better than Nuno at the right hand. But
yeah.
Nuno kills me on the other hand. So,
The
what's fun?
legato stuff, right? Yeah.
His solos are on such another level. I mean,
Yeah.
such another. Nuno is like he's like the beast of beasts. He does things like that all of us talk about. Like Phil X will call me, "Hey, did you see that thing Nuno did?" And Richie Kotzen goes, "Oh, Nuno's doing kind of a crazy thing," and we're all like, I mean, Nuno lately has just exploded with a
Yeah.
rebirth of Nuno Betancourt, and nobody can touch him. Nobody can touch him.
Yeah.
Because his tone is so good. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: when we came out, right? Nuno came out before I did, and I remember I hated his guts because his album came out, and I'd be in New York City with my girlfriend, who was then an editor of Vogue magazine, and we were all
Mm.
young kids, and his album, the first Extreme album, was a giant poster at Fourth and B Tower Records. And
Oh, okay.
time we'd walk by it, my girlfriend and all her girlfriends would look at that and go, "Nuno, my God, he's so beautiful, Nuno." And I'm like,
What's a coming?
guy. Then I find out, I wasn't really an Extreme fan,
No.
and no disrespect, but it just wasn't quite my thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was a little bit more outside. I was more of an alternative kind of a guy. And, but then I listened to his guitar playing. I'm like, not only is he beautiful and good looking, he's insane. When you heard Porno Graffiti, you're kind of like, I remember I was on tour with Color Code, and I was hanging out in Denmark on the tour bus of a band from the Bronx in New York called 24/7 Spies, which were
Okay.
some hardcore brothers from New York that were like serious musicians and serious punk rock, kind of like Bad Brains on another level, maybe, or on a different.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, 24/7 Spies. You should check them out. And I
Nice.
was on the bus, and they were like some hardcore brothers. And I always got along good with 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 the brothers and with Indians and with Mexicans, with white people too. I could fit right in and all that. And I remember we heard "Get the Funk Out" that came out, and and it was on the radio in Denmark, and Jimmy Hazel, the guitarist, turned it up for a minute. Rick Skater was like, "Turn that shit off." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Let me hear it. It sounds pretty sick." It had some. It was amazing, and the solo was insane. But they hated it because they're like, "Guys, get the funk out." What the? They were so, as African Americans from New York City, like they were in for some reason insulted by this track,
Hmm.
and I was like, well, I don't want to be a dick or nothing, guys. I love you guys, but it sounds pretty badass. But some of the lyric was a little bit, didn't really work. I guess no bad apple's going to spoil my fun or something like that. Wasn't quite street enough. But when you listen to Nuno, you're
Yeah.
like, who the? I mean, Nuno Bentoncourt is like, and so Nuno now is me, Phil X, Richie Kotzen. We're all like brothers, right? And we all
Nice.
talk. And Nuno pretty much is. We all agree that no one can touch Nuno.
Mm.
He's like, we were all jamming, we were all doing things. In 1990, I got number one best guitarist, new guitarist in Japan and whatever Player Magazine or Guitar World or whatever it was called then. And
Right.
Nuno got second. And then in America, Nuno got first, Richie Kotzen got second, I got third or fourth. And in England, maybe Vernon Reed got, or Nuno
Vernon's
might have got
incredible.
it, and I got like second or third. So we were always, we were always in this thing in those readers polls when we were young.
Yeah.
And I kind of started to move away from trying to be known as a guitar hero. It kind of happened by accident, really, because of I opened up the Joe Satriani tour in 1990.
Yeah.
But the guys just did it, and like I said, all of us agree, man. Nuno's just on another level.
Yeah. It's funny being from the Boston area that I am. It's funny. I didn't even have to look up that Extreme was from the Boston area because as soon as Gary said the line, "Nobody wants to take you prisoner,"
That was it. Huh?
I'm like, okay, somebody's with at least perhaps even the North Shore area here.
Yeah, yeah, I could dig
Sure
that.
enough, yeah.
I always thought that Gary, being a massive Van Halen fan,
Hmm.
I never thought that was going to work when I heard he was joining the band. But I remember Richie Kotzen and I popped down because Richie was my neighbor in Hollywood for years. He's like my little
Sure.
brother.
Yeah.
Richie's like my little brother. And I
Yeah.
mean, we've been in car crashes together, and we've been all over the world together. We played together in every type of way.
Nice.
And Richie and I popped down to the Universal Amphitheater because back in our rock star days, I could get his call and we'd pull in the back and free tickets and back, that whole thing we used to do. And so Richie and I sat down and we watched Extreme and at the Universal Amphitheater, we both kind of said to ourselves, God, that singer's got such a perfect voice. But we always felt like he missed his calling. Like he would have been a superstar on Broadway. Like he was
Hmm.
like he was like an actor singing. I mean, he still could, he's
Yeah.
got that purity.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't think he had enough devil in him. And I think every God needs a devil to stay in business. And if you're a rock star and you can't be, Gary Sharon seems like he's just all God. He needs he needs some devil. Everybody needs a little devil in him.
The up and down. Yeah.
You gotta have it. It's like,
Yeah.
Richie Kotzen, he's got a crazy side. Phil X, he got a crazy side. And I'm out of my mind. So it's like, and a lot of my friends are like that. Edward used to go out with Edward Van Halen. You better watch out at night. One time with Eddie, we were on a double date one time, me and Eddie, and I couldn't find him, and he climbed a tree at a restaurant in Beverly Hills. Like, he was out of his mind.
Oh, you're making me miss him. Even
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
But you doing more research as I have for a period of time worked, and hopefully I have this right, and Wikipedia didn't goof.
Yeah.
They have, yeah. Well, we'll see. Hopefully you can set this one. Did you work at the Smithsonian Museum for the
Yeah, I did.
American?
Yeah, I've done some weird. I
Elaborate if you want. You know.
Oh man, hey, I was very proud of that, and I'll tell you, it came after the '90s. I was pretty much sick of music, and I'd had a record deal for a long time, made a record tour, and I don't know if you ever noticed my career in the '90s where I would piss off my label because all of a sudden I would like say in 1993, I got shit going good. I decide I don't want to tour. I'm going to join a band with Terrence Trent D'Arby because we're going to go on tour with Duran Duran, and I want to just go do something completely different.
Mhm.
Um, then because I was doing the same thing over and over and I wasn't growing. So I'd go
Mm.
out and I would tour and I'd go play with these other musicians, Michael Hutchence from NXS or whoever. And I'd sit in a room and I'd start grooving with these kind of guys. And even if I wasn't making money, Buddy Miles and Bootsy Collins and me in a power trio with Bill Laswell, things where I could grow. And it was not good for my career record sales wise, but it was great for my career as a musician. It kept me, that's probably why people still know me 100 years later, right? But, the Wikipedia thing, I don't know if it captures all of that madness. So because I never look at it, so I don't know. It's hard to say.
Nah, I was, but I looked at your site as well as, and of course that's much more of a.
I think it's. I think I haven't updated it since 2016. I updated it in 2017 when I had a film come out. But the reason that this, I don't even know, the Smithsonian's in there. I'm glad because I didn't know if it was put in there or not.
It
What
was.
happened was, in 2000, the year 2000, I was sick of the music business. Like I said, I wanted to get out of it. I was just sick of it. I started buying land in Costa Rica and I was surfing down there all the time. And, I was losing my mind really. And I went to open up for the Rolling Stones in Toronto, Canada, this big event. And I got called from a guy called Brian Wright McLeod, who was a Native American. I'm a Native American, I'm Apache Indian. And he was writing a book about every bit of recorded music in Native American history, going all the way back to 1908 in the wax cylinders, right?
Wow.
And he wanted me in his encyclopedia, his book, which I was very flattered by. And, I was glad to do it because I thought it was important for me to look after the indigenous community best I could to try to help any way I could. So I go meet this guy, and I'm sitting in his house the day before I had to go to sound check for the Stones, and it was the Stones and Rush, and it was a whole bunch of bands in this giant thing for I don't know what it was for, but it was big. It was 500,000 people, giant thing.
Wow.
It was for SARS. Everyone had it was SARS and something to do. It's called SARS stock, we called it.
Sure.
But so the day before I have to go do this giant show, I go get interviewed by Brian Wright McLeod, and he turns me on to all these native musicians. And they were musicians who I knew. I knew their names. I'd read their names on album liner notes since I was a little kid. Like my first band I ever joined, I don't know if you know this, was Rod Stewart after my high school band. And
Oh.
so I used to read Rod Stewart's liner notes in sixth grade on Atlantic Crossing or something to be a guy called Jesse Ed Davis.
Mhm.
Well, I never knew that Jesse Ed Davis was a Kiowa Indian. I never knew he was a skin, and Link Ray. Man, I listened to Rumble all the time. I did not know he was a Native American. So I started to really think, I've sold a few million albums and I've played with the biggest people in the world, probably most of them, a lot of them. And I don't know that these guys that played with these people were even Native Americans. And I figure if I don't know, most Native Americans don't know. So I wanted to do something to help indigenous people see that there were role models out there other than Geronimo and Sitting Bull and people from 150 years ago. There were musicians that did, which is almost the impossible, which is, being successful in the music business, really. And so I set out to do something, and I wanted to make a coffee table book or something. I didn't know what to do, but I felt it was time for me to give back. I was financially, pretty well off, and I'd had a great long career, and I was just thinking I got to do something. And I met a guy called Tim Johnson. I went to go to Six Nations Canada and help a guy called Kenny Hill, who passed away unfortunately, build this recording studio on an Indian reservation because he wanted Native people to have an insane studio to record at. Excuse me. And so while there, I gave a speech. And in that audience was a Mohawk man named Tim Johnson, who was the co-director of the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. So he came up and met me. He goes, "I love your speech." Because I had a line I used to say, and that I meant, and it said, "Everyone's trying to get one Indian into the mainstream." And I said, they love it in Native culture around the world. Let's bring the mainstream to Indian country. And he liked that. So he said, "Will you come down to Washington, D.C. and check out the museum?" I said, "Sure." So a week or two later, I jumped on a plane in San Diego and I flew to DC and I met with Tim and I walked through the museum. And then he goes, "You want to go to see the New York Museum?" And I go, "Yeah." So we went to the train station. We jumped on a train same day and we just went to go see the New York Museum all on the same day, right?
Sure.
And on that train ride, I told him the story about these musicians. And he said, "We should do an exhibit." And I'm like, "Yeah." So they made me an offer. They gave me a 3-year contract, and I created the exhibit with the Smithsonian called. It was really Rumble, like my film Rumble, The Indians Rock the World. I wanted to call it Rumble, but they called it Up Where We Belong: Natives in Popular Culture, and it was pretty much the seeds of the movie I made called Rumble. We first fleshed it out, became a huge exhibit in both in DC and New York. And when it was done, I went about to go get the movie made. And that's how I had a job at the Smithsonian. But the cool thing about it was like my agent at William Morris, my really dear friend John Marks, head of music at William Morris.
Yeah.
On my email, it would say Stevie Salas, advisor to contemporary music, the Smithsonian National Museum, Washington, D.C., blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, all my big time baller, rich manager, lawyer, music business guys were going, "Dude, that's legit." Because all us music guys, I don't care how successful you are, we never feel like in other people's eyes we look like we're legit. We always feel like, "Oh, guy's a criminal or he's a drug addict or whatever."
Whatever
And
the case, yeah.
my Smithsonian address on my emails was like pretty impressive to the music business friends of mine
Yeah.
that were there. So,
Yeah.
by then I was also working at American Idol, I think already at that time too as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna get to that too. I had a couple questions about that, but the Rumble film, I saw that. Kind of didn't forget that that was you, but like seeing that, I adored that film.
Oh yeah,
Can I
thank you.
just say my family and all of us watched it probably right over there at least twice or three times in a week, and just it was amazing.
That was my baby. That was my baby.
We
It was
gotta
my
go
first
back.
movie. It was my first film. I'd already produced a TV series by that point. It was my first film, and I got nominated for an Emmy Award, and I lost. So I'm an official Emmy loser, which I think it sounds so dope. It sounds so punk rock. I put it on all my Emmy loser.
Perfect.
It
It's like
sounds like
when it's like didn't Metallica when they lost the Justice album they
lost
put
the.
Grammy losers or something, didn't they put that on the sticker?
I love that. It's like when I was playing with Wayne Kramer in the MC5, man, I wanted to be known. I'm an Emmy loser, man.
Nice. So the American Idol thing, take it as
Oh, by the way, real quick, Andy, everyone should watch Rumble. It was on Netflix forever. Now it's on Amazon Prime if you want to see it.
perfect.
And it won
Perfect.
Sundance and it won a ton of awards all over the world. Okay, okay, there you go.
Outstanding. I'll put a link for it when we put it down there in
Starring Slash and Iggy Pop and Link,
oh, everybody.
Steven
Yeah.
Tyler. And I mean, everybody came out for me and did the film. It was wonderful.
So great. I loved it. Really, really, really did. I'm not just saying that as a show host either. The American Idol thing, music director, correct? Is it was
And
it
a,
the
and a consultant.
and consultant? Okay. For those who may not know, um, the music director for a band, what does that entail for that type of position? I heard a few things when there was a story Phil X had said on one of his YouTube videos, and he was because he played on the Daughtry album, and he was recounting the first, I think the first time you two connected, where he said, I'm paraphrasing it best, where he goes, you get on the phone, "Hey Phil, this is Stevie Salas." He goes, "Two bullets and a gun, Stevie Salas." He
Yeah,
says,
exactly what he said. First, he was all quiet. He's all, "Stevie, you calling me?" I go, "God damn." Two bullets in a gun, Stevie Salas. I'm like, yeah, that's
That
me.
man has energy for aeons of time.
Yeah, yeah,
Love
yeah.
him. I would love to have him here. But
Spoke to him.
anyways, yeah, if you could elaborate on your position and how you were doing that and
Well,
everything.
I'll explain to you what an MD is real quick. So an
Yeah.
MD, before I was a recording artist, before I had a record deal, I had hits as a producer.
Hmm.
I started producing in 1987, and I did it. I would just tell people I'm a producer, and they would let me try, and then I'd cut something and they'd like it. So it wasn't like I went to producer school or anything. But
Hmm.
what it was I wanted to play guitar a certain way on records, and everybody sounded like George Lynch, and everybody sounded like Bon Jovi and Motley Crue, and in those years in 87, 86,
Hmm.
88 in LA. And I was trying to do something different, but nobody would really understand what I wanted to do, and it wouldn't make sense to them unless I produced the track and they heard the guitar done that way, and then they're like, "Whoa, this is dope." So that's kind of how I became a producer. And when I produced Was Not Was, it was just kind of a fluke that we had this #1 record, and Out Come the Freaks I produced, and I played. We did the videos for Walk the Dinosaur and all that. But later on, being the producer is a studio thing where you're rearranging, you're changing keys to song, you're doing all kinds of stuff when you're the producer of a record, a lot. Well, when you become a music director, it's kind of like you're the producer for the live band. I would walk in, I was like, drummer, you're dragging your ass, you need to play the hi-hat more on top there, or you're pushing, or hey guys, the song needs to come up 2 beats per minute. Famously maybe known for MD and Sash Jordan Rats after I produced their album, and I found a young drummer named Taylor Hawkins, and I worked Taylor Hawkins to death. But he would talk about me like how I was so gnarly and so mean to him, but he also would talk to me about how he needed it, and that's what made him who he is. And after he died, everybody was crushed, and his son started writing me, and he goes, my dad would tell me everybody needs a guy like you, So as a music director, you're almost like in the studio. You could be a producer and wearing some drummer out about a track. Well, you're doing it live too, and you're picking, how we're ending songs, and there's a lot involved. Hiring each guy, everybody that's the right guy. Everybody that's great doesn't necessarily make a great band. Sometimes it makes a pure shit band. Everything has to have this. This guy pushes, well, this guy pulls, and it's like, oh, that works good together. But if they both push, it sounds like little kid music. So you're handpicking the right things. And with Daughtry, my first idol was Daughtry. He was super into Nickelback and these kind of bands, right? And I wasn't.
Right.
Not that, no disrespect to Chad. I'm going to see Chad. I'm going to go jam with Sammy Hagar, and Chad's going to be there in a few weeks down in Cabo. We're all going down there. But Chad's a
Nice.
sweet. But no disrespect, no disrespect to Chad. But so with Daughtry, we were going through the songs and when they were writing, and I was a consultant at Idol as well. So his manager Sterling McElwain and I worked together, and we were in the surfing club. But I was the only musician. It was all heads of Island Records and heads of William Morris and the lawyer for the White Stripe. All business guys except me. I was the musician, and we would travel around the world and surf, and we would hire each other. So Sterling called me. He goes, "Hey, Simon Fuller wants me to come work at Idle and work with this kid called Daughtry. If I do it, will you come over with me?" And I go, "Yeah." So I came over. I wouldn't have done it if it was 2000, because to me, I hated the show and I don't like those type of shows. And in 2000, it was too new, and Mick Jagger wouldn't have called me to be his music director and his guitar player if I had already done American Idol, because he would have thought that was not cool. But in 2006, when I came over, the writing was on the wall that the music business was over. And so I said, "This is the big in town, so I'm going to do this." So I got Daughtry, was going through all the songs and all the rough mixes, and we were trying to sit down, we were trying, who's his market? Who's his audience? And without letting them get too much in that Nickelback thing, he still had this thing that was a little bit like pop and country, soulful kind of thing. And
Yep.
so I kind of kept him in that. So every musician I'd hired, Daughtry and I auditioned hundreds of musicians. I snuck in the guitar player from San Diego because I knew he was great, um, Josh Steely, because
Ah,
I wanted to give back. So in every Idol band, I put somebody from my hometown in San Diego, where I live, in one of the Idol bands, so they could have a shot at a career,
yep.
right? So with Daughtry, I remember there's a guy called it's a Mexican guy. He plays in the band called what's the song? Does tell me if you ever had another son. Uh,
Oh,
what are they called? I'm blanking right now, but that
um,
band has the Maldonado brothers.
yes,
So
yes.
Hector Maldonado and his brother plays in Foreigner now, I think. But
Ah.
but they both played in that band. I forget with that singer. And he came in, Hector Maldonado, and I think, all right, he grew up where I grew up, and he knew me. He used to watch me when we were probably close to the same age, but I made it really young. I got really lucky and made it super young. So I felt older than all those guys. And so I go, he's perfect and he's tasty. Train, it was the band Train, and that he was in, right?
Okay,
Okay.
God, that was gonna kill me.
So he's playing, and he's kind of a Mexican looking guy, and he had his hair pulled back in a ponytail,
Hmm.
and but he could tell if he let his hair out, he'd look rock and roll. But he was
Hmm.
playing super tastefully, and he was playing this Daughtry stuff. And I had him learn a Led Zeppelin song for the auditions or whatever. And I auditioned 150 guitar players, probably, and drummers and all that. So I go, this guy's great. I'm thinking this guy's great. I go, I think I want to hire this guy. And Daughtry walks over to me while he's playing, and I'm thinking Daughtry's going to go, man, this guy's great. And he whispers in my ear, goes, this guy's great, but he looks like he should play in Los Lobos. And I go, all right, cut. Thanks, Hector. And I just had to move on. Had to move on because he had this visualization of a band with a Paul Reed Smith guitar and a Mesa Boogie amp, like
Oh
all
yeah.
those were doing during 2006. It had
Hmm.
that same sound and that same look, that thing. And this guy
Yeah.
had a Strat playing through something. So it wasn't going to work. So sometimes as an MD, you can override your artist and say like, nah, just trust me, this is your guy. And then sometimes you got to say like, wow, this guy would have been great, but I want to make the singer happy. I want to move on. And
Yeah.
and so that's what an MD does. An MD is like there. If he's up there singing and he's killing it, I'm back there going like this. And if he starts to have a problem, I'm there to catch him when he falls and get him back up there, and make
Yeah.
sure that he feels powerful and feels great. And the whole band. And sometimes that takes me kicking their ass. Sometimes that makes me being awfully mean. But if you want to be great, if you really want to be great, sometimes you got to listen to hard truths. You can't just be glazed all the time. And I used to bum out a lot of people, because I was like, that sucks. Because people used to say that to me. Rod Stewart used to laugh in my face, you know. The only one that never did. By the time I was a music director for Mick Jagger, I was so on top of my game. Jagger would call me 5 times a day and talk to me about every detail. And he would complain about some of the other guys that I'd have to go fix. Never me, thank God, thank God. But in the beginning, and in those times, sometimes you learn that you can't always be Mr. Congeniality. You gotta be honest, and an artist needs to have thick skin. Go back and read the articles. Google Stevie Salas and Taylor Hawkins, and you'll see a million articles doing that to them.
Yeah. My goodness. It's so great. Yeah, when I was coming up doing there were like music camps, like rock kind of National Guitar Workshop was a thing for a while, and they had the summer camps for the like 10 to 15-year-old demographic, and coming up on those, I remember the first band director or counselor or whatever was there. He had a gym whistle. So when we were doing bad,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he would drill us. But you know what? I am so glad because
That's
if we had continued on, how bad would it have gotten?
You ever play sports? You know, the
Yeah.
it's a lot like being a coach. Sometimes you just hate your coach. He makes you run laps and do push-ups. And sometimes at the end, when you win the championship, you put him on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of like that. You can't always be liked, but in the end, you're going to be respected, and they're going to be and people are going to be grateful for what you did if you do your job right. And the
Yeah.
artist or the athlete is truly grown up and ready to truly meet greatness. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, Rod Stewart was great because when I was a little kid, Rod almost fired me every single week because didn't know what I was doing. It was my first band other than my high school band, and I'm in this band with Rod Stewart playing football stadiums and arenas, and I'm just almost getting fired every week because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But Rod was athlete, still is, soccer player, big time, really, really a good sportsman.
Yeah.
And I sort of I'm a jock too in a lot of ways. And I was able to relate to him about believing in us and letting us fight for him. And it made sense to him. And that's how I kept that job with Rod Stewart. And but when I was hired before that by Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, he wasn't that kind of guy, and Andy fired me immediately. So, and then Andy didn't go on to have a great career after that either. Even though he was super talented.
Yeah. Well, Stevie, what is something you are working on the present, apart from getting ready to in a few weeks to go to Cabo with Sammy Hagar, Chad Kruger and company, whoever else? What is
Belinda Carlisle. I got to learn some Belinda Carlisle songs.
okay.
Yeah,
So that's
I
one
think I
thing.
think Cantrell's going to come down there too. My Cantrell and me are super old friends. I think he'll be there. But no, what am I working on? Mostly, I'm going next week with Jimmy Dunlap. Jim Dunlap. Everyone's guitar picks say Jim Dunlap and your wah wah MXR pedals. Jim
Oh yeah.
Dunlap's he's like my brother. He used to be my bodyguard on tour when we were young.
Nice.
Um, Giant color code days around the world. But Jimmy and I are flying to Europe next week. We're going to hang out in England for a couple of days for some
Nice.
stuff, and then we're going to a thing called the Guitar Summit.
Ooh,
It's in
okay.
Mannheim, Germany. It's like a big deal. It's like a guitar show, like a NAMM show just for guitars and bass. It's really,
Mm.
really cool. And so we're flying into there. And I'm working on film stuff right now, film scripts. I just have another movie that just came out that I produced. It's on Tubi right now called Protectors of the Land. I got a couple of other docs. One I co-directed, another one that was on HBO. It's getting ready to get sold right now. So I'm writing, working on television and film stuff, and always looking around for something musically to do that sounds fun for me. I did the MC5 album with Wayne before he died, and I actually went and played live with, put a band together with Wayne. We put a band together and went out and toured with the original Color Code drummer Winston A. Watson Jr. on drums, which was really, really great.
Very awesome.
So anybody who saw me on the Satriani tour in 1990, the Flying in a Blue Dream tour, that drummer Winston, after he left me, he played with Bob Dylan for years, and then recently I got Wayne to call him to come in and do the MC5, and it was great. It was really great,
Nice.
really great.
Nice.
Yeah, and Bob Ezrin did produce the record, so it was really fun to work with a legend like Bob Ezrin, because I could ask him all the questions, like how did you get the guitar sound on those Alice Cooper records, or worked on the wall or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Fantastic.
Other
Well,
other than that, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel it out. I see what's out there and what I feel like doing.
yeah.
I got a new sports bar that I'm one of the owners of, in the new
Nice.
Hard Rock Hotel, and in the Hollywood, Florida, which the big guitar tower. We're talking
Hmm.
about opening a few of those things, and I'm always trying to be in touch with Steven Tyler. I play with Matt Sorum still a lot on some of his privates. Me and Phil X did a thing recently. If you can Google this, it's pretty cool. We did a Highway Star with Glenn Hughes singing, and Matt Sorum and Carmine Rojas playing drums and bass, and
Oh,
me and X me and X
yes.
do the solo, and I forgot I could still play like that. I mean, so I had to really prove it to myself that I could, all that shit. And it was really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I nailed it. And I was really proud of myself because I don't play like that so much anymore. I'm not in that kind of shape. But Phil, that's the thing about being with Phil. I play with Phil a lot. And Phil and I were just in Europe playing some gigs in
Mhm.
June, and David Bryan from Bon Jovi came. And when you play with Phil, or you play with any of those guys, if I sit down with Richie Kotzen, I sit down with Richie Kotzen all the time. You gotta bring it, because they'll make you look really bad, and not on purpose.
Oh,
Not on
no.
purpose. They don't
No. Yeah.
they don't try to embarrass you, but you will be embarrassed if you don't get up there and step it up. And I love that. I need that. And being around my friends like that, makes me have to be better. And I love it because I need it. I need it. Otherwise, I'm just like, eh.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I think that is good thing I don't have to dictate this like or write it out because that
I
there was
forget it. Forget it. Yeah. Yeah. You
this
should
is
cut this up in teeny little mini one your question and quick little parts of the answer, because the answers are always too long. But
you know what? I
all
had I had a full page and I think I got like three of them, but you know what? Who cares?
there you go. There you go. As long as you got the important ones that you were always curious about, you should
Oh
ask them.
yeah.
So,
Always. Yep.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good.
Well, Stevie, this has been fantastic. This has been the Rock, Roll, and Red Plaid podcast. Keep it rock, keep it roll, keep it red plaid. And
All
we're
right.
done. For more of my original content, visit my website, www.andyconley.com.